I'd like to give a warm welcome to our speaker, Kent Donnelly. Now, Kent, for more than 30 years, he has combined research and behavioral psychology to foster positive individual behaviors in environmental conservation. And 12 of those 30 years, his focus has been primarily on the human dimension of invasive species. Ken's a researcher, strategist, trainer, and a speaker, and he's currently the supervisor of the Nova Scotia Invasive Species Council, as well as the vice chair of the Canadian Council on Invasive Species. Now, for the next 45 minutes or so, Ken's going to discuss with us how to cultivate conservation activity by applying behavioral psychology to education and outreach programs. And now that's my spiel. I'm going to stop. Or Gabby, if you don't mind, stop sharing your screen and I'll pass the torch over to you, Ken.
Great. Thanks very much, Chris, for that invitation. It's great. I'm grateful for the opportunity to kick off this year's NISA webinar program. The Canadian Council does this every year, and there's a lot of people that join in, so it's exciting for me to be part of that. I'd just ask, perhaps, if you guys don't mind, to putting your name and where you're from into the chat. It's always nice to see how many people we've got and where they're from. I'm joining you from Mi'kma'ki, which is also known as Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia is part of Mi'kma'ki, and this similar territory to what Chris outlined earlier. So I'm going to talk to you about behavior change, using behavioral psychology to prevent invasive species. I changed the title a little bit from what was promoted just to fit it onto the slide. But that really what this is about is adding a layer of behavioral psychology to improve the effectiveness of communications and outreach programs. So let me get on with this here. I'm just going to move a menu item here. Okay, great. So just some takeaways. You don't have to memorize this or anything. I'm going to review this at the end, but what we're going to be talking about is intention and not action. Making actions easy, the actions that you want people to undertake, to make them easy for them. Seeking commitment to the action, reminding people to act, and how to harness the power of peer pressure to get those people who may be a little reluctant to participate in what you want done, get them on board as well. So I'll explain as we go along here. But before we start, I'd just like to talk about some research that was done. In 2015, there was a study at 34 hospitals, and what they were looking at was compliance with hand washing protocols. And during that study, across those 34 hospitals, they secretly watched caregivers at the opportunity they had to wash their hands. The nurses and doctors are supposed to wash their hands when they go from one patient to the next. And there were 14 million washing hands opportunities, but only half of the time did the nurses and doctors actually wash their hands and meet the protocols that are necessary. And in the afternoon, it got worse, with the compliance dropping 38% from what it had been in the morning. So who knows, maybe they were getting tired of washing their hands. Maybe they were very, very busy and thought, okay, I'll be okay if I skip it once or twice. I don't know what it was, but it dropped off, which suggests that if you're going to get hit by a bus tomorrow, try and get hit in the morning, because you'd have a better chance than having a doctor or a nurse with clean hands coming to see you than you would if you got hit late afternoon. And this extrapolates to 600,000 unnecessary infections, 35,000 unnecessary deaths, and $12.5 billion 2015 dollars in added costs in US every year. So you've got a situation where the doctors and nurses are supposed to wash their hands and they're not doing it. So why am I talking about doctors and nurses in a webinar about invasive species. It's because we clearly, doctors and nurses go to school for a long, long time. Like, they know all about infectious diseases. They know that it's possible that if they were treating somebody who was sick and then or hurt, and maybe there was blood involved or whatever, and they did not wash their hands before they went to see the next patient, they could spread disease or make this person sicker. So they know all about it. They're experts in that. They know better than those of us who are not in the medical industry know about all of that kind of thing. Yet they don't always wash their hands. In fact, half the time they weren't. So what do we learn from that? It's just an example that even though people have the intention, and you think you got to expect that the doctors know that they should be washing their hands and they intend to wash their hands, doesn't mean that they'll actually take the action. And there's all kinds of examples of this. And in fact, it's such a true situation that behavioral psychologists have a name for it. They call it the intention action gap. When somebody intends to do something but they don't actually do it. And from that, we learn, or we can see that it's not enough for us when we're doing communications outreach just to convince people that they should, like the people behind me on the screen, clean, drain, and dry their boat, or convince them that they should be brushing their boots and their clothes after they come off the trail to get rid of any invasive species that might be on them before they walk off to the next place that they're going to. It's not enough just to convince them that they should be doing it, and then sit back and think, okay, well, I've done my work here. They're going to do that. That's great. I'm done. We can't be assured that the behavior will follow, because even with doctors and nurses, in critical situations, they're not doing it, even though they intend to. Now, I always say at this stage that I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing the education and awareness component of outreach. That's really important, because people aren't going to take this action if they don't believe our preferred actions, if they don't believe it's important. So we do have to convince them, but we can't just stop there. What are we trying to achieve? Do we want to have a whole bunch of doctors and nurses that intend to wash their hands and know that they should be washing their hands? Is that where we want to stop? No, we want to stop with them taking those actions. And same thing with invasive species. And just a point to underline it, when they're filming movies, does the director click that clapperboard and shout intend? No, they call for action. And we need to call for action too. We can't stop at just intention. So in order to foster action and not just awareness and attitude, there are several steps, and I'm going to highlight 5 of them at a high level in this presentation. So the first one is doing your research, finding out why people aren't taking the action, making the action easy, getting commitment from people, reminding them, and using peer pressure. So I'm going to go through each of these different steps and explain them. And the first one is doing the research. So why do people dump bait? Why do anglers dump their bait? When they're finished fishing, any extra bait, why would they dump it in the water? Why do some people release goldfish if they can no longer take care of them or don't want to take care of them? Why might they release them in a local pond? Why do people fail to clean, drain, dry their boats, and kayaks, and canoes when they know that they should be doing it? Or why do gardeners plant invasives when they know all about gardening and know that that's not a good practice? So the thing is, we have to find out the actual reasons. We can't just guess about this. So never assume that you know you can be an expert in invasive species, you can be an expert in communications, you can be an expert in changing behavior, but you can never be an expert in knowing what somebody else is thinking, unless you have mind reading capabilities. So you have to ask. You have to ask your target audience, and that means that you have to do some research. And I won't go into a lot of detail here, but the research methods that we typically use are literature reviews, because we can learn from what other people, some what work may have been done in the same jurisdiction or in other jurisdictions. We do surveys because surveys are kind of magical. You can survey a sample of a population, find out what people are thinking, what their attitudes are, what's preventing them from taking actions, that kind of thing. And you can then extrapolate to a certain amount of error how many people in the larger population feel that same way. We use focus groups mainly only when something has come up in the literature reviews and surveys, as particularly in the surveys, that seems really odd, unexpected, and unexplainable. And then we might get 10 to 12 people together and do a focus group and try and drill down on that issue to understand it. You can't drill down in a survey. Surveys, you have to ask everybody the same question. Focus groups, you have a lot more leeway to do whatever you want. So that's the only time we really do focus groups. Observations are really important, particularly because when you do a survey, if you ask people in a survey if they brush their boots after a hike, most of them are going to say yes, even if they don't really understand why you're asking. But they can probably figure out that the socially acceptable answer is yes. And so a lot of people will say yes, even though they've never done it or they don't brush their boots, but it makes them, it's a social bias. It puts them, they feel that it'll put them in a better light if they say yes. So we always have to be careful with that measurement of the social bias of self-reporting. But if you do observations, so if you went out to a head of a trail and you just observed how many people are coming off the trail and whether they're brushing their boots or not, then you'd have real data and not just relying on what people are reporting. So that's the kind of research we do. And I won't go into the methods, but any further. But what we do try and find out, and I'll use the example of Play Clean Go here, is generally these are what we try to find out in a survey is, first of all, do people have awareness about the issue? Do they know about invasive species? Do they know about introductions and the spread and the human part of that as a pathway? Are they educated about it? Do they have the awareness? And do they have the right attitude? Do they think it's important or not? Because if they don't have the awareness and they don't have the attitude, then we're going to have to work on that. Then we want to know how many people are brushing their boots for Play Clean Go. How many people reporting how much that they brush their boots, and whether or not they say yes to that, we say, well, when you don't, why don't you? And from that, we find out what the barriers might be. For Play Clean Go, they'll often say, well, because I don't have any equipment, I don't know what to do, I just forget, that kind of thing. We also ask, when you do brush your boots, why do you do it? Because we want to find out what the motivators are. So the motivators are often things like, well, not to spread invasive species. I like clean boots. Before I get in my car, I want them to be clean. It may not have anything to do with invasive species. But by finding out what does motivate people to Play Clean Go, then we might be able to use that insight to convince other people to do the same. And we always check on communications channels. So we like to ask, where did you learn what you know? Like, was it from TV? Was it from a park ranger, or what signage? How did you find out what you know about invasive species? And then we ask them, what's the best way to reach people like them? What channels are effective? And interestingly, it's very rare in the results of the survey that people say that the best way to reach them is the same way that they learned about invasive species, which suggests that we're not always using the best channels. So it's important to find out what's the best channels to use. And then we look for trust as an expert. Um, so we ask, who, if somebody's telling you something about invasive species, who would you trust? And we have a list of people and organizations, and then we say check off the ones that you trust, and that helps us decide who the spokesperson should be, who should be connecting with them. So that's the end of the research. If I'm doing a workshop, I go into a lot more detail on that, but that's a pretty high level discussion. But the most important thing about research is to do it and try and find out the answers to those questions I had. Just quickly want to go through this innovation adoption curve before moving to the next step. Whenever we're trying to get people to adopt behaviors, we should be considering this innovation adoption curve. And so the curve is a bell curve, and under the blue line lies the total population that is our target audience. And that target audience might be anglers, might be hikers, it might be campers, it might be people traveling with RVs, might be just a few people that are walking on a small trail in a park. Whatever the population is, they all fit underneath there. And as we go from left to right, we also are going from the easiest people to get on board with taking our action to the more difficult people. So the very first ones are the innovators, and they get on board right away. And that essentially is the people that are in the audience today. 2.5% of people are innovators. We know about invasive species. We work in invasive species. We know all the reasons that it's important to take action. So if there's a new action to stop invasive species, we're just going to do it because we know how important it is. We're very invested in it. The early adopters are people like our friends and family and people that know us. That's a good example of early adopters who they may not have all the knowledge that we have, but they have a lot of confidence that we know what we're talking about, and that if we're going to do it, that they should probably be doing it too. So they're the next kind of group of people that get on board. And then as you move right, it gets a little more difficult. The early majority are people who maybe they're conservation minded. They don't know a lot about invasive species, but generally they like to protect the earth. So they will get on board with a little bit more attention and applications of the kind of tools that I'm going to be talking about soon. And then as we get past that tipping point, past the 50%, and we start coming down the curve, you've got a late majority who it'll take more work to get them on board. But once they're seeing other people doing it from the early majority and early adopters, and they're learning more, they may come along, and they may not even really feel really strongly about protecting biodiversity, for example, but they get on board because they think it's the right thing to do. And the laggards are the most difficult. Some of them will never get on board. Some of them will after a very long time. But there are ways where we can get to those people as well. So as I go through these tools that I'm going to talk about, think of this adoption curve, and the easier people, the people that are easy to get on board are going to be handled sort of at the very beginning here. And as I get on to other tools, we'll be addressing those people that are a little more challenging. So the next step is making it easy. So Daniel Kahneman, who is the only, he's the first of only two winners of the Nobel Prize for Behavioral Economics. On his 80th birthday, was interviewed by NPR, and one of the questions asked of him was, "What's the most important thing to do if you're trying to get people to change their behavior? And his answer was, make it easy. And that's what we have to do, is make things easy. And the way we do that is to remove the barriers that we've identified in that research that people have said have prevented them, that sometimes prevent them from taking the action, and leverage the motivators that they've indicated as why they sometimes take the action. So I like to think of the barriers as like friction. So these are the forces that make adoption of the new behavior difficult. And the way I picture it in my mind is that it would be like pushing a heavy fridge up a ramp to get it into apartments, like when I was going to university or something. And that was a lot of work, really hard to do to take that action. If we have steps that we're asking people to take to perform actions, and it's really difficult, and if it's more difficult than what they're doing now, then it's unlikely that they're going to readily take on that new behavior. And even when they do, they might not do it as often as they might if it wasn't so difficult. But if we can take that have a level playing field where at least where the preferred behavior is as easy to do as the current behavior, then it becomes much easier to convince people and get them to change to this new action that we want them to take. And if we can actually make the new action easier to do than what they were previously doing, it makes it more attractive, and they're much more likely to do it. So we want to remove these barriers. And I'll show you an example of really good barrier removal, looking at Play Clean Go again. And that is because we often hear from people when we do surveys with Play Clean Go that they don't know what to do, they don't remember, and they don't have the equipment necessary to brush their boots and brush their pants and brush their clothes rather. By putting a boot brush station right at the head of a trail, we give them the equipment, we give them the information that they need on what to do, and it's a reminder because it sticks out like a sore thumb. It's right there. They have to walk right by it. It's very easy to do. Why not just stop for a little bit and brush your boots off? If you're getting in your car, it's going to keep your car clean. So by making it easy, we can get a whole bunch of those people on that curve involved. So the next step then is getting commitment from people. Once you've made it easy, you've removed those barriers, you still have to get people thinking that they should do it. So I'm going to show you a video. And in this video, I can't remember if I have autoplay on or not. I do. I'm just going to stop it here. Okay, so in this video, this woman she's just bought this is just for laugh gags, but she's just bought a keyboard, and it's brand new. It's even got a little bow on it, as if it's a gift for somebody. And she just is asking people walking by if they could just watch this piece of musical equipment for a minute while she goes back into the store because she has to go to the washroom. And then somebody comes along, one of her Confederates, and distracts the person. And so they're not looking at the keyboard. And while they're distracted, you'll see there's a switcheroo is done and there's a garbage truck comes in. And what happens is suddenly the keyboard is no longer where it was, where the person was supposed to be watching it. And a keyboard is being thrown into the garbage truck. So it looks like the garbage men are picking up this new keyboard and taking it away. And you'll watch what the action is when these people we'll see what happens after committing to watching the keyboard. And, whoops, I'm sorry.
Could you just keep an eye on my keyboard while I go to the toilet? I'll be
So you can see, oh, sorry, just get my microphone right here. You can see that, after somebody makes a commitment, they feel really badly if they failed to do what they said they would do. And this is where behavioral psychology comes into effect for this outreach. In our society, people want to be seen to be consistent with what they say they'll do, because not being consistent is looked on badly. So when they commit to doing something, they're much more likely to do it than if they had not made a commitment. But beyond that, and as I say, this is where the behavioral psychology really comes into this, is that once somebody makes a commitment to take an action, they change their self-perception. So if they commit to always picking up after their dog with a plastic bag and putting it in the garbage, then they see themselves as a responsible pet owner that does that. If they say, yes, I will recycle, then they see themselves as a recycler. And avoiding the spread of invasive species by brushing your boots or not moving firewood, whatever the behavior is, they see themselves as a person that does that. So there's many different examples. Now, one thing is that somebody that doesn't make a commitment at all is not as likely to take an action that we talked to them about as those people who make a verbal commitment and just say, yes, I'll do that. This has been studied for years, and it's true. If you make a commitment, you're much more likely to do it. It's not 100%, but it's much more likely to do it. A written commitment is stronger, and a public commitment is stronger still. So more people will actually take the action if they're making a public commitment. I'm going to show you how to make a public commitment, get them to make a public commitment a little bit later in this presentation. But the really important thing is we have to think commitment at each contact. When I'm out in the field and I'm doing this kind of work, my feeling is that anybody that gets in within 6 feet of me is going to be asked for a commitment to take action. You have to do it. Be aware too, if you're hiring summer students or whatever, or even if you're doing this yourselves, a lot of people are reluctant to ask for commitment. I don't know if it's fear of rejection or whatever it is, but a lot of people don't, they'll inform, but they don't ask for commitment. And you're not applying behavioral psychology if you're not asking for a commitment. So I want to show you how, though, something that's really important is how you can remove barriers and secure commitment at the same time, and in a very short piece of time. So what I have here is a video I put together, and you're going to see that there's a woman who is a wild spotter ambassador. Now that's a program down in the States that I'm one of the trainers for. And she is working outdoors near a trail, and she's trying to get people to adopt the actions for Play Clean Go of cleaning their boots after hiking. And the person that she's going to talk to has no knowledge really about invasive species, and is going to throw up some barriers that of why she can't participate. Now, the person working on this, doing the outreach, because she's done the research and she's prepared she knows what kind of barriers people are going to throw up, and she's got a script that she's kind of memorized, and she knows how she's going to address each of them. So watch in about a minute and 45 seconds, she's going to remove three common barriers that a person tosses up when you ask them to commit to brushing their boots, and she's going to ask for a commitment at each stage. And finally, she'll really wear the person out in a way, and that person's going to say, yeah, I guess there's no reason why I shouldn't be doing this, so I will do it. So just take a listen here.
Hi, I am Joanna.
Hi, Joanna. My name is Clarissa.
It is a beautiful day for a walk.
Yes, it sure is.
Clarissa, I am a wild spotter ambassador, and today I am speaking with people like you about how they can help stop the spread of invasive species.
What are invasive species?
Invasive species are plants and animals that are not native to an area and can cause destruction to natural areas by killing off other species.
Oh, that sounds awful. But what do I have to do with that?
Well, when hiking through an area like this, invasive plants or insects might hitch a ride with you by sticking to your boots and clothes. They can then drop off somewhere else and start a new population.
Yikes. I didn't know that. What can I do?
You can stop the spread of invasive species every time you start or end an outdoor walk. Would you be willing to do that?
I am afraid I can't. I don't have a clue how to do that.
Well, it is easy as play, clean, go. All you have to do is look for mud and dirt and remove it. And check for any parts of plants, like thistles, leaves or stems. Anything you see, just brush it off. Then go on your way. Can you do that?
I don't know. That sounds difficult.
It isn't difficult. You can just brush it off with your hands, or better, with a handheld brush. Will you do that?
Sorry, but I don't have a brush like that.
No problem, I can give you one. We are handing them out for free. See how I can use the brush on my pants and boots, and get into the treads with this pick? It is easy and only takes a moment. And it can make a big difference. Now, is there anything else that would prevent you from brushing your boots and pants to stop invasive species?
No, I can't think of anything.
Okay then, will you play, clean, and go?
Yes, you can count on it.
So there she's made a verbal commitment to take the action after all the barriers were removed, all the barriers that she could come up with. So when you're securing commitments, try and break down the barriers until there are no more. Not all barriers can be broken down just in conversation, like I showed before. The installation of a boot brush station breaks down significant barriers. But each time when there's a barrier presented, you say, okay, ask, can we count on you to give it a try? And then if they present another one, you break that one down too. And then secure a written commitment or a public commitment because they are stronger. And here's a really good tip. In many cases, like for instance, if you're talking to a gardener and you've convinced them they should pull out the periwinkle that's in their yard, ask them if it's okay if they drop by in a few weeks and see how they're doing. Ask if it's okay for a follow-up. Even if you don't follow up, the fact that you might follow up, it has been, through research, has been found to really help solidify commitments. So because people don't want to be caught not doing what they were supposed to be doing. You have to practice this, and you have to have a script, and you have to have the benefit of the research to know what likely is going to be tossed up as barriers. But when you're well prepared, it's actually quite easy to secure commitments. So let's move on now. You've got commitments, and what you do next is that it's great that they have commitments. You still have to support people. And one way to support them is to remind them. And effective reminders are in a place where a decision is to be made to take the action. It provides the information in the right place at the right time. It's a reminder that supports the other elements like commitments that we've talked about, removing barriers. And this is a photo of a signage that was put up about 12 years ago, I believe, in BC at a boat launch. And it reminds people that they should clean, drain, dry their boats, provides information on how to do it. You might not need so much information on a sign now. That's a busy sign, but in those days, this was a new concept for people. So it showed them exactly what to do and where to look on the boat. And so it provides the right information at the right time, and reminds them. So here's a couple more examples. The right information at the right place at the right time. I took this photo on an airplane. You lift up the toilet seat and it says trash it, don't flush it. It tells you not to flush things down the toilet that shouldn't be in there. And it's right there. As soon as you open that lid, it's right there where you need to know. If it's a card that's in the information holder on the back of the seat that's in front of you, where the menu is and that sort of thing, that's hardly effective there. But when it's right there where you might possibly throw something in that toilet shouldn't be in there, that's where the reminder should be. And similarly, the boot brush station is the right information at the right place at the right time, provides the information that people need and the equipment and everything right there at the head of a trail. So you've got to remind people, and I just want to point out that billboards and brochures and fridge magnets all have their place in providing awareness and developing attitude, and they're great to have, but they're not reminders unless they're at the right place. Fridge magnets that say clean, drain, dry are only reminders, effective reminders, if you keep your boat in your kitchen. If you don't keep your boat in your kitchen, have the reminders at the boat launch where you really want the action to happen. And then finally, I want to talk about using peer pressure, and this is to get those last people who are the laggards on the right-hand side. It works for other people as well, but it's one of the most, it's at its most powerful when it's dealing with these people who are reluctant to take on the new attitude. Sorry, they're reluctant to take on the new action, but they can be influenced by their peers. So here's some a video. It's pretty self-explanatory about social norms.
No, is that the other participant is one of psychology's oldest. The Ash experiment is one of psychology's oldest and most popular pieces of research. A volunteer is told that he's taking part in a visual perception test. What he doesn't know is that the other participants are actors, and he's the only person taking part in the real test, which is actually about group conformity.
Please begin. The experiment you will be taking part in today involves the perception of line length. Your task will be simply to look at the line here on the left and indicate which of the three lines on the right is equal to it in length. So, for example,
the actors have been told to match the wrong lines. The volunteer will be monitored to see if he gives the correct answer or if he goes along with the opinion of the group and gives the wrong answer. In the first test, the correct answer is 2.
1. 1. 1. 2. 1.
Once again, the correct answer is 2.
3. 3. 3. 3.
3.
The Ash experiment has been repeated many times, and the results have been supported again and again. We will conform to the group. Again, we're very social creatures. We're very much aware of what the people around us think. We want to be liked. We don't want to be seen to rock the boat, so we will go along with the group. Even if we don't believe what people are saying, we'll still go along.
1. 1. 1.
Group dynamics is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology.
So, as he says, even if we don't believe that what the action that we're being asked to take is the right one, we'll tend to do it if there's peer pressure. So that's really powerful, and it helps to get those laggards involved. And I'll just go back to this sign again. It provides peer pressure because if you are coming out of that water with your boat and you see this sign and there's other people around and you know that you are supposed to clean, drain, dry your boat and other people are do it too to protect that lake, even if you don't believe in it, you're going to feel immense pressure to actually do it and conform. And I can tell you back in the 90s when I was working on waste management programs, recycling, we saw that happen. Because recycling happens out at the curb and people put their recyclables out in bags or bins or whatever on recycling day. At first, there was a certain amount of people that would participate, but participation grew and grew and grew because clearly what people were seeing was that even those people who didn't really believe in recycling were realizing that they were the ones on their street that weren't recycling and everybody else was, and it got people through peer pressure to participate. So stickers like this create a social norm. So with programs that the Clean Drain Dry program, what you can do is once somebody makes a commitment, and this is that makes the verbal commitment, you can jump right to a public commitment by simply giving somebody a sticker like this and saying, hey, you've made the commitment, let's put this on your trailer here and we'll show people that you've committed to clean, draining and drying your boat. And if you just hand them that sticker, it's a good chance that they're not going to put it on and they may put in their glove compartment or whatever of the truck. But if you start peeling it off and you say, hey, let's go put it on the winch post of your trailer, you're probably going to be able to get it on. So that's the approach I would take. And then that becomes a public sign of this person that says, I clean, drain, dry to prevent spread of aquatic invasive species. And it's going to be more difficult for them not to do it with that sticker on there. But not only that, that is a reminder to them as well, because if they are going to climb up on the trailer and reel the boat in, that sticker is right in front of them, reminding them that they should clean, drain, and dry. And it creates that peer pressure that they know that if they don't do it, people are going to say, hey, look at that person. They've got a clean, drain, dry sticker and they didn't even do it. So let's take a look at these takeaways again. Intention is not action. This is the most important thing to understand from this presentation. If you don't remember anything about this, remember, intention is not action. If you convince somebody that climate change is real and they really should go home and put a programmable thermostat up, that's great that you've convinced them to do that, but it doesn't mean it'll get done. You have to work on the action, not just the intention. Make actions easy to remove barriers, motivate people based on what the research says, seek commitments to action, help them out when they've made the commitments by reminding them right there at the right time with the right information, and harness the power of peer pressure because it's very, very powerful. I just forgot to point out that ASH experiment has been done many, many times, like the guy said. Generally, it's 70 to 75% of the subjects will start giving the wrong answer to the line length just because of peer pressure. So that's it. Hopefully we've got time, Chris, for some questions if there are any. I just have some information there. People can feel free to get in touch with me if they have any questions. There's the information. And if people want to know more about applying behavioral psychology to get people to take actions, if you scan that code, it'll take you to my website, and a pop-up will show up that and allows you to enter your email address and subscribe to the Behavior Change newsletter that I put out. So, Chris, I'd be happy to answer any questions people might have.
Awesome, stunning. Thanks so much, Ken. This is really awesome and important topic to cover. I know, especially with CCIS's work, we do a lot of our take action programs, and internally and with our chapters, you've been helping us create this kind of community of practice on those take action programs and to incorporate behavior change. So really important work, and you're an essential part of that. Awesome presentation. So if anyone has any questions, please throw them in the Q&A. Let's see. Have you done any observational studies on compliance with Play Clean Go when a boot brush is provided?
Um, I have not. I know of some research that was done in Hawaii. And it was actually, it's quite an interesting way that they did it, because if you sit there by a boot brush station and you have a clipboard, people are probably, and you're watching the boot brush station, people are probably going to figure out, oh, they're recording whether or not I'm using the boot brush station. So that might influence them. So what they did instead, there was two people, and when somebody walked up, they pretended to ask them a survey about tourism. And where have you come from? Where are you? What brings you to hiking here on our trail today? Blah blah blah. And then they went and sat down. But actually, the only thing they were recording was whether people were using the boot brush or not. Now, unfortunately, I don't remember the metrics for that. But the compliance was pretty significant. But I do recall that, and it was. I think a primary reason was the boot brush station was right there, like they had to walk right by it, whether they're going on or coming off the trail.
Beautiful. I have a question for you. Like in the picture behind you there, there's you doing some clean and drain dry with boats. Could you kind of give us a rundown? Like, how would you approach getting a commitment from someone at an outreach event, like a boot brush station, or sorry, a clean drain dry of a boat? How would you go approach getting a commitment from someone in person?
Yeah, so in this particular instance, what we had here, and maybe what I'll do is just move over a little bit so people can see, whoops, there, you can see what's going on there a bit better. So this was in Ontario years ago with the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters. So we had a setup with a portable boat washing system, and we washed boats as people were coming off. Now that guy there is standing up on the top of the boat. It's a bass boat, and while the student is doing the work of cleaning the boat, he's talking to the guy about it, and getting him to and showing him where to pressure wash and all of that sort of thing. And at the end of it, as he answers all kinds of questions, and he said, "So do you understand now?" And the guy said, "Yes." And then, "Is there any reason why you wouldn't clean, drain, dry your boat?" And if the person says no, then they say, "Okay, can we count on you to do it again?" It doesn't have to be, put your hand over your heart and put your hand up and pledge or anything like that. Just make it simple for them to say yes. And when in this case, what would happen is the person would say yes, and then the guy had a clipboard, and on it he had a piece of paper that was like a petition, and it had names on it, and he would say, "We're keeping track of everybody who's agreed to clean, drain, dry their boat. Would you mind just adding your name to the list so we know how many people we get?" And when the person does, they're making a written commitment. They may not even realize it. They're not filling out a pledge form or anything like that, but they're making a written commitment. And while the guy's writing his name on, he'd point out, "See that little box beside where you're writing your name? If you check that box off, you're giving us permission to use your name or your initials or whatever to promote clean, drain, dry, because we want to show people that people like you take the action to clean, drain, dry." Now, not everybody's going to say yes to that, but many people will. And I call that climbing the ladder of commitment. So you've got people going from, no commitment to a verbal commitment to a written commitment to a public commitment in a very short period of time. Mm-hmm. Now, lately because people love stickers and everything, frankly, when I'm working on this, I don't get the written commitments anymore. I go right to the public commitment, give them a sticker or something to say, "Hey, can we use your name, or can you show that you are committed to this?" Because you also get those benefits of having that sticker on like in the case of boats, which reminds them as well.
Awesome. Yeah, really easy to get that commitment, it sounds like, and really important. Let's see. We have a bunch of questions. Someone from New Zealand, welcome. Thanks for joining us. As you have explained, some people are very negative to new ideas. How do you best deal with these people if trying to communicate a message?
Well, for one thing, what I tell people is if they're negative and they're obnoxious and angry, spend your time talking to somebody else. Those are the laggards, and you're probably not going to convince them at that time. And you're going to have a long enough day when you're trying to talk to a lot of people and get commitments. If somebody is extremely negative, you might as well cut that conversation fairly short. If you realize that you're not going to get anywhere near, if you're not going to be able to connect with them, life's too short. But most people are not like that, right? And hopefully, a person like that is going to be affected more like by the social norms as more and more people do this.
Yeah, peer pressure definitely a powerful force. I felt that especially in high school. And then this next question here is actually related to negative peer pressure. What do you suggest to combat the pressure to not perform an action? So specifically when people are waiting in line at a busy boat ramp and don't want to take the time to clean, drain, dry because of the long line.
Yeah, I think Tony's probably a boater because we've all experienced that. There's immense pressure when you're taking your boat in or putting it out, backing it down the ramp, and there's people waiting. So that is difficult. Frankly, that is more an issue of poor um, design of the boat launch or the situation. Now, in fairness, boat launches have been around for a really long time, and it's only been the last 10 or 12 years that we've been asking people to clean, drain, dry. So there's not, many times there's not equipment available. There maybe not very much room for to clean, drain, dry. So those are barriers to participation. Long lineups themselves are, means it's not that efficient to boat launch stations. So in on this particular issue, one of the things that I advocate for is better boat launch stations, and certainly any new ones that are put in should have room for people to pull off and clean drain dry their boats, so they're not in that queue.
Beautiful. We're already over, but I'll ask one more from chat here, and then we'll call it here. What would you recommend to reduce pet release? As an example, red-eared slider. Targeting pet stores can help at the source, but what about people who already have these pets?
Yeah, it's challenging. We have our program, as you know, Chris, the Don't Let It Loose program, and we are working quite closely with Pets Canada. There are opportunities using social media to try and find somebody that might be able to take a pet. There's our places, some pet stores will take them back. They might not even promote it very much, but that just, I've talked to several who have said, well, and in some cases they're not even allowed, they're not supposed to take them back, but they will quietly because they don't want to see the pet come to a bad end, and they don't want to see ponds suddenly filling up with goldfish and that sort of thing. So there are some options there. I would suggest to people that they, if they get in the position where they, for instance, have fish, an aquarium, and they have fish, and they just simply can't take care of them anymore. Try and give it away to somebody who can. Try to contact the pet store and see what options there are. But whatever it is, do not let it out into the wild.
Thanks so much, Ken. I'm going to end it there. Sorry, we didn't have time to get to everybody's questions, but Ken did share his email if you'd like to reach out to him. If you didn't get that, you can always reach out to Canadian Council on Invasive Species directly, and we can forward any questions along. Ken, thank you so much for taking the time to present with everybody. Really great presentation to kick off our webinar series here. Thanks everyone for tuning in. And our next one is on Monday, 10th at 12 Eastern, if you would like to check that out. Awesome. Thanks so much, Ken.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks to everyone I see in the chat with the nice comments. I really appreciate it. Take care.